this is fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's got really outside of both of them. Maloney!
Oh, he's taken Anderson. Anderson's up to
Oh my God! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's going to get full.
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, here we go.
Oh no! That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my God!
God, what?
This is the original esport racing game. This is iRacing.
Sometimes you look at a holy grail and you can do nothing but admire. You cannot say anything more about this track. It is one which goes down in Australian sim racing history, one that has gone down in Australian motorsports history, and one which goes down in the folklore of racing and will do for generation upon generation. These fabled 6.2 kilometres have shared so many tales here in New South Wales, here in Bathurst, Australia. It is Mount Panorama's circuit, and it is legendary here again on SimSpeed TV and the iRacing Esports Network. Your Monday night V8 head to this legendary circuit for round 2 of the championship for what is the longest race in about 3 years. It will be 33 laps, but more importantly than that, it is qualifying at this moment in time. Dane Warren, fastest, 2:02.7, half a second over last time out's winner, and championship leader Harley Haber in second place. It's Jake Sperry here in the commentary box, joined by Ryan Jones and also Jake Burton as well. But first and foremost, it's all welcome to the commentary box for you, Burton. Must be a little bit different seeing yourself on the other side of proceedings, more rather than racing today.
Yeah, a little bit different, but excited to see what these guys can do in our new supercars. I have commentated the Monday night series to those who were still around back in 2017 and 2016. I did it with Sam Sutton, who's racing tonight, currently sitting 6th on the provisional grid, but really excited to see this 33-lap race here at, as you said, the holy grail of Australian.
And on top of this, Ryan, you've got to look at drivers now who are thinking about, well, how do we get today working for us? There's a long strategy card being played. You've got yourself probably upwards of 25 laps to a tank of fuel. You're really pushing it, so there's a lot of momentum change to get around a fantastic circuit. You can talk about just how brilliant it is. You can overtake at Griffin's Bend if you're brave, up into Cutting if you're brave. You can get it done at the Forest Elbow. If you're looking for the big overtake, it's the Chase. There's 4 really nice places around this track where things could potentially be done for you today for the 26 who are out there trying to qualify.
Yes, certainly. You've also got to be patient at this track, though, because there's a couple kilometres of racetrack where you really can't overtake at all. That's across the top of the mountain, because it's a true street circuit up there, concrete walls lining the side of the circuit, and no braking zones either, apart from the skyline, which is instant death if you try to overtake there. So you got to be patient, you got to pick your moment, and look after those tyres, because 33 laps, as we've said, is a long way. And at the end of a stint, your tyres here are going to be hurting massively, and especially with the new tyre model too. Some of these drivers might not be too accustomed to it just yet.
Well, going up through the order, James Scott jumps second. Dane Warren finds 3/10 worth of improvement then in terms of his times. Looking like Chris Coxhead over the line does not find improvement. Adam Briggs jumps up to 9th place on a 2:03.9. Here's Wayne Burke in the one performance car, 2:03.8, good enough to jump to 8th place, the outside of the 4th row. And Brian Borg does a 2:03.9, so he finds himself on the 5th row in 10th place. So it's all changed at the moment. The times certainly dropping down, and it's that new tyre model that's making all the difference, has to be said, as Corey Preston goes to 12th here, Burton.
Yeah, that's a very impressive lap from Dane. I had a watch of the lap, and it didn't actually look like he got it as nice as I know Dane would have liked to get it. So I think he actually had a little bit more time in it. So to have that big of a margin, to be honest, I'm expecting a bit of a slaughter from Danos here tonight. I think he's going to absolutely run away from this one. However, how good does that battle for P2 look? We've got James Scott, Harley Haber, Brady Myers, and Cooper Webster all within about half a tenth of a second.
And if you took a look at AOSC's finale, you know that Sam Sutton has the race pace as well. He's in 6th. Dan Drakea crosses the line, and that is a 2:07.7, so that puts him very firmly in 25th. Zach Hanlon currently on a 2:18.5, his best time, but he'll be out of time as qualifying is brought to a close. This is how the grid will stack then here at Mount Panorama Circuit for 33 laps. It will be Dane Warren on the pole position. James Scott alongside him. Harley Haber will go from 3rd with Brady Myers alongside Cooper Webster. Starts 5th with Sam Sutton in 6th place. Michael Taliancic will go from 7th. It's Wayne Burke in 8th. Then Jordan Ross starting from 9th. Brian Borg in 10th position. Ryan, you've got 11 to 20.
Adam Briggs starts just outside that top 10 with Corey Preston alongside him. Bracken Anzi and Chris Coxhead starting off the 7th row of the grid ahead of Blake Purdy and Brad Newman. Christian Smart, Kyle Stokes, 17th and 18th. Top 20 rounded out by Guy Leach and Brenton Hobson.
And then you've got the final few finishers coming in. You've got Steve Jansen, Sean Thompson, Matt Morris, Luke Page, Dan Drakea, and Zach Hanlon. Burton, what are you expecting then? Big strategy window, a lot of variables. It just seems like you need a little bit of a breakaway to start here when it comes to racing.
Yeah, that's it. I think something that we should mention is the new method of starting in this car. Some people are still starting it the same way, but the new iteration of the iRacing Supercar now has a line locker like they have in real life. So much like a handbrake, it locks the car on the line, meaning you can bind the car up on the clutch, which makes a big difference at a track like this where we've got a really long gear ratio. Really allows these guys to get off the line good. So it's going to be really, really hard to make a move into turn 1 because most guys should be able to get the start nice and easily done. But I think if Dane can get away, he's going to run away with this one.
Well, here starts to become the questions. Who gets an early Christmas present, seeing as we're about a day away from that? Who is going to find themselves wishing they didn't have coal in their stockings as they look to try and get themselves maybe some recoveries up through the field? Expect some changes, expect some tough battling here, and they all know what's at stake when it comes to racing like this. Keep an eye out on the lights because 2 minutes finds itself done, and there's a green flag, and let's get ourselves underway. Warren gets a pretty good start. It's a horrible one for Brady Myers. He gets swamped by 3 vehicles on the run into turn number 1, and immediately 3 wide they go into Hell's Corner there and off into the grass there. That will be Adam Briggs and someone else in the background into the fence, and that wasn't part of the plan. Another vehicle spins as well. That's Coxhead in the fence. Trakea's gone around at turn 1 on the cold tyres. Not good. Someone all 4 wheels on the grass going through. Was that Steve Jansen potentially? No, that was Kyle Stokes, who found himself in all sorts of trouble. But Ryan, it was a maddening start to go through. And Warren wide, as well as there's more contact. There's Wayne Burke in the fence now. Side by side for the lead. Here comes Harley around the outside, trying to get it done at the cutting. He finds himself nowhere to go and just out of the fence and loses 2 places there, Ryan.
There's been a crash at Griffin's Bend too. It's been a very frantic start up and down this field. A lot of drivers struggling on these cold tyres. Harley Haber and Dane Warren showing us that very well indeed. Both of them making uncharacteristic mistakes in the opening exchanges. We're already on board with Michael Taliancic as he makes his way across the top of the mountain. But let's take a look at this replay here from Modern Simulation. And this is the run into Griffin's Bend. A sea of cars, and then suddenly someone gets turned around, and the action already unfolding before we picked it up on the camera. Griffin's Bend, a tricky corner to spin.
It was Wayne Burke, then Luke Page found himself in trouble in the KRF car. So he had nowhere to go on a track which was very almost blocked. So that pretty much says all you need to know about that. But down the hill, they come along for the first time. Here comes Haber trying to make the move on Cooper Webster, moving to the inside, heading to the fastest corner in Australian sim racing. Here goes through this very, very quick right-hander and gets himself right down on the brakes and a comfortable position. But Cooper's not going to be waiting too long here to try and get back. Of course, here, Burton, you got to talk about Mountain Straight, Conrod Straight, the two big prime places where moves can be done.
That's it. And speaking of moves, Jordan Ross is all over the back of Mike Talianchich at the moment. Mike had a big lockup coming into the chase, and that hyperheats the tyre. So now Jordan Ross is going to be able to have a crack into turn one and will likely get it done simply because Mike will have no steer in that car, but there's contact at the apex.
There absolutely is contact, and behind that are there's troubles. Brian Borg around, he's collected Kananzi. More drivers caught up in that. 3, 4, 5, 6. No cautions in this. Thompson's been caught up. Newman finds himself escaping to the grass as well, which is ice in the new build. So now that's a lot of drivers. Hobson caught up in that as well. Hobbo 88 will not be best pleased here, Ryan. A big incident at the start of lap 2 in a place you normally don't see a big incident.
Yeah, that was very messy, and Brian Borg's just been hit in the rear end into the corner, which has spun him around, and unfortunately onto the racing line. And as cars ricocheted across the track, there was a lot of drivers that found themselves the innocent victim in all of that, and a lot of people have been taken out of contention with a lot of damage to their car at a very strange spot for a massive incident like that.
And Matt Morris is out of the race as well. He had himself big damage in all of that. He blew his engine actually, trying to get around everything. So he just got the hit, and then his engine just went kaboomski. So for Matt Morris, his day is done as well. Big casualties then in the mid to rear of this field. Completely changes the way that this race is run for 33 laps. You talk about those though, near the front of this field. It is a pack of 5, but it's breaking away. Warren has already got himself a second at the front over James Scott in second, Haven third, Webster fourth, Sam Sutton there in 5th place. You've got to start looking a little bit further down the trains though here, Burton, to see exactly where the troubles are lying for certain drivers, because here's Corey. Oh, Corey. Can you save it? 5 times you have to say it, because he was all out of shape heading to the chase.
That corner is so fast. That's about 290 kilometers an hour on approach there. So Corey's actually done a good job to pull that out as we check it out on the modem simulation replay here in slow motion. Corey getting a big moment at the kink, and has actually done well to not lock the thing up and wipe Jordan Ross out there. Really smart driving.
You can see he's just unsettled the car by getting over the curb, and you can see it on slow-mo just how much he has done so well to correct as we go back live to racing action here around this Mount Panorama circuit. A lot of drivers have not made it home through that open lap. Brian Borg is one of them. Wayne Burke, Sean Thompson, Brenton Hobson down in the pits. Matt Morris out. That's 5 retirements on lap 2, which brings a 26-car field down to, I believe, 17, 18. There's no Chris Coxhead, no Zach Hanlon either. So that's 7 retirements there, Burton, on the second lap of the race. And this is the thing. Mount Panorama, either it's nice and everyone gets along nicely, or everyone finds themselves in a bit of trouble. So that's why the mid-pack is so feared when it comes to this track.
Yeah, finishing the race really is important around here, as it is in any race, but particularly at Bathurst where the attrition rate is so high. My eyes are actually on Sam Sutton at the moment. He was the 2015 V8 Scots Bathurst 1000 winner. He can clearly wheel a car around here, and he's very reliable. He's sitting pretty here in P5 at the moment, probably just saving a little bit of fuel tucked up here behind Cooper Webster. I'd be looking towards him to maybe have a crack at P3 or P2 in this one. However, Dane Warren has absolutely checked out up front.
He certainly has, and he is trying to run away with everything that he's got. James Scott under pressure, being managed about by Dean Thrower as well as they go in. Nice and close there on the power there for Harley Haber. He's got a great run out of the chase, and they have a run here at Murray's Corner. He can just get it down in and on those brakes. He can't just yet. He'll have to sit and wait. This will allow Webster back in onto the draft, as will Sam Sutton as well. But Harley, as per usual here, Ryan, looking like his aggressive self, wanting to make the move, but he's just sitting, waiting for it. Even a half little look there through turn 1, that's not going to help him in terms of momentum up towards Griffins.
It won't. He's being very aggressive, but he's got the pace, because a lap before the last, when he was booked up behind Scott, he was quicker than the race leader Dane Warren. But now he looks at the inside of James Scott, and on the brakes, gets the move done. Just forks the car on the apex just a little bit to prevent the crossover from James Scott. and he moves up into P2. So now we see and wait whether Harley Haber can close the gap and catch Dane Warren, who is starting to open up a nice little lead. It's over a second and a half now.
I've just caught an eye on Brady Myers, who has just come down in pit lane. I believe it is to get a bit of damage sorted out after all his issues that he's been in the opening lap. So for Brady Myers, his day will not be very entertaining by his standards at all in terms of how he wants it done. Webster, though, still looking to put the pressure on. James Scott really is the cork in the bottle right now, and it's two ERT cars together. They're under new management as of a week and a bit's time here, Mr. Burton. So now you've got to start thinking about, well, what's the precedent you want to set going into 2020? Are we going to play team orders, or are we going to be in a position where you fight for everything that you've got on the table?
Well, I don't think ERT's ever really been a team for team orders. So I honestly think that if Cooper's faster, he'll probably attack being this early in the race. He can probably keep up with Harley, whereas James seems a little bit rattled at the moment. So I think it'd be smart for Cooper to have a crack sometime soon. However, you do have Sam Sutton sitting there as well. And Sam is a man who does like to capitalise on anything that happens in front of him. So Cooper's got to be wary that if he makes this move, he's got to make it stick.
He absolutely has to, and he's just got to be very cautious about how he goes out there and attacks that move. It's so easy to get it wrong around this track as gap extends to 2.4 seconds at the front. Corey Preston, though, still stuck behind Jordan Ross, 6th and 7th on the road right now as they all look to try and find themselves in a very nice battle at the moment. So we'll see how Preston in the number 23 machine deals with Jordan Ross in the 10. Exto Gaming versus ERT. Up the hill they come along towards the Griffin's Bend. And Preston's been stuck here, Ryan, for a couple of laps at least as they make themselves a little look. He's getting in the mirrors. He's trying to affect Jordan Ross here, but Ross will not be so easily deterred.
Indeed, he had a good run off turn 1 there, and I think he needs to really set himself up here. Cross mountain, down through Forest Elbow. We see often when drivers are stuck behind someone else, they'll have like a little look at Forest Elbow and compromise their run out of the corner. He needs to not do that because he's probably not going to be close enough. If he focuses on the exit from Forest Elbow and jumps onto that throttle and gets the run better than Jordan Ross, he's going to have the slipstream too. And come the chase, he should be in the prime spot for an overtake. But this run down the mountain now from Skyline onwards is absolutely crucial. And it's already on the edge when you're coming down here. When you're trying to find that last little half attempt, it's so easy to make a mistake.
It certainly is, and if there are mistakes, then there are places to be capitalised on. Mike Italiancic there and Adam Briggs will want in on this as well if they can get themselves into a position to go out there to overtake, to get exactly what they want from this field. But for the time being, they are not in the best positions to go out there and stay within the second. In fact, Corey Preston struggling over the course of this lap to stay with Jordan Ross, who had a very, very good mountain section there. And really, in terms of unlocking the lap time, Burton, it has to be the mountain where you find most of the time gain.
Oh, not necessarily, Sperry. I think a big issue for Corey at the moment is these cars are always difficult to see around at Bathurst. So sighting those apexes when you're pushing the limits so close with the walls is always tough. But with the iteration of these new cars with the big 747 wings on the back of them, I think makes it even harder to be able to see around them. So you can see Corey there, he just missed a few marks going over the top. Just can't quite see back around the back of that ERT machine.
Well, it might just be the widest machine in all of New South Wales at the moment, the way that Corey Preston can't find himself a way to get through. Christian Smart comes back out of pit road after repairing some of his damage. He's a lap down at the moment in what is 18th place on the road right now. That will soon be 17th if he can find a way past Brady Myers. Now, this is going to be an interesting factor here to look at the way that this race will go. Some drivers will take the repairs and get back out here, Ryan, because of the fact that this is an official strength of field race. There are iRacing points on offer for the championship. There's safety rating that's on the line if you don't get yourself over to the line. There's also that very, very credited iRating. And looking at those drivers who are numbers the likes of 15 and down, they probably have more of an emphasis to stay out there and get themselves going, more rather than those who maybe have a little bit more to lose compared to these sorts of fields.
Certainly do, and that's why the official racing is sometimes a little bit tame, but also a little bit desperate sometimes. The drivers are desperate not to lose iRating points. And certainly someone like Grady Myers, who is a lap down. He's number 3 in the series, so at the moment he stands to lose a lot of iRating for himself, and maybe that's why Jake Burton's up here in the comms box, because he's protecting his precious iRating. Jake?
I am like 30 iRating away from 7,000. There was no way I was racing this tonight. Too risky.
Well, that pretty much tells you all you need to know about the mindset of some drivers as they look to try and get themselves through. Left-hand kick at the final corner for those 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th on the road as they look to try and get anywhere near as we keep an eye and look behind. Look at Michael Taliancic. He's had a very, very strong run over the last couple of laps here, Burton. He's caught right up to the back of Ross and Preston. His last lap time was a 2:05.5. He took 7/10 of a second out of both Ross and Preston.
Yeah, but I think he's spent more of this race with his front tyres stopped than moving, and that's something you really need to worry about in these cars. These tyres hyperheat when they're locked, and if Mike's not careful and he keeps locking those front brakes, he's going to have nothing left in a couple of laps. So that's something he's got to start thinking about. Bring his brake marker a little bit further back so that he can start to attack Corey on corner exit, because Corey is driving pretty sloppy at the moment.
Well, hopefully that he can find himself some improvements. Of course, Preston won the AOSC Bathurst 650. He did so alongside Bradley Ratu in a very, very clever strategic drive that got him to what he wanted. Of course, that strategy window is going to be very crucial. That pit window, you would feel, opens in about a lap or two's time. If you did want to come down in, if you did want to make a stop, and you did want to get yourself back out and going again, if you are very brave to go on a very, very big undercut strategy. So we'll see how this plays out for some drivers who are maybe thinking about coming in early here, Ryan, to repair damage at the earliest opportunity.
Yes, certainly. A lot of these drivers sort of have their own strategies sort of mapped out in their minds heading into this race. Of course, nothing ever goes how you plan in the sim racing, or in fact motorsport in the real world as well. So they're going to have to be willing to adapt, and someone like Corey Preston, who's stuck behind Jordan Ross, he might be someone that wants to pit a little bit earlier than perhaps he anticipated, because it does seem that he's being held up by Jordan Ross. And similarly, Michael Taliancic and Adam Briggs are starting to come up into the back of this battle as well. So these guys in a stage now, maybe they just sit back and just wait a couple laps and then pull the trigger as early as they can. But the issue with that is you end up getting to the end of the race and you have an incredibly long final stint. And when everyone sorts to close back up and you've all made your pit stops, you find yourself on a lot older tyres than those around you.
Yeah, that always seems to be a difficulty, but look at this pack. They've all got to be worried about one driver behind in this one as well. It's Brett Cananzi in the number 17 machine. He's very much had a good run up through this field. He started 13th, he's up 3 into 10th place at this moment, trying to stay with Noah's Ark Racing here. They're 2x2 at the moment. Preston not close enough into turn 2. Same said for Adam Briggs here, and Briggs probably in a better position to try and make this move. But again, the mountain, you're probably hoping for a mistake here, because you're going to be stuck behind here, Burton, for about 3 kilometres or so.
Yeah, I think Briggs is looking really good here. His consistency over the last few laps, last 3 in particular, all the last 3 laps within a tenth of a second. In contrast, Taliancic, his has been separated by about 9 tenths. So I don't think that Briggs is that fast, but he's certainly very consistent, which is rewarding him at the moment. If he can clear Taliancic and make no more mistakes, I think he might even be able to challenge Preston.
Well, he certainly could. Down the hill over Brock Skyline and into the very, very dangerous sections, the dipper here. And now they head themselves over towards the Forest Elbow, which is a very tough braking zone. You turn and then you brake, and you've got to make sure the car is as straight as possible as you head through this section before going down the hill and onto the Conrod as they go on along. And this is where I think we're seeing drivers looking at that strategy here, Ryan. Maybe not willing to go out there and make that move, more happy to sit in that draft, save a bit of fuel, try and get a lap if they can. Not if you're Corey Preston, though. Oh, it's so close between them as they head through that section. Has to hit the brakes, though, and say, I can't make it this lap.
So I think maybe the better person to answer this question might be Mr. Jake Burton up here in the comments box, because you're, as you mentioned, almost a 7,000 iRating, so you know your way around the strategy. if you were some of these guys tucked up behind Jordan Ross, what would your sort of go-to strategy be here? Would you pit early? Would you ride it out? What are you thinking?
Well, this car in iRacing does have a lot of degradation at this point in time. It's a couple seconds over the stint at least, depending on the track. It's quite cold, so we're not going to see it as much. If I were Corey, I'd be saving a bit of fuel. Trying to save a bit of fuel, which is what this race is going to be limited by, not the tyres. So if he can save some fuel in the massive draft effect that we see in these cars, especially with how much aero they have now, he'll be able to jump Jordan in the pits, which is much safer than doing it on a US server around a track like this.
And look at that from Adam Briggs. He's done wonders down the inside of Michael Taliantic, and very nearly the two came together, but great battling still up through the cutting, and ultimately Briggs will not be able to shake him off. Finally gets himself some daylight to attack some corners, but now Brett Cananzi here on the back, and that is going to be something. Keep in mind, Cananzi now has just quietly just waited Burton to get himself into position to try and make himself available for overtake. So for the time being, Cananzi just happy to sit, happy to wait, but happy to be within a second.
Yeah, I think Cananzi's probably hiding a little bit. He's in a Mustang car number 17 at Bathurst, so he's probably got a few more horsepower under the bonnet than most others. So hopefully he'll be able to challenge later in this race and attack Taliantic pretty soon. He seems to be struggling at the moment.
Yeah, he will definitely want to go out there and attack his way back out of pit road. He's 4 laps down at the moment, and he's desperately trying to make sure that he gets himself going. Dane Warren's lead, though, at the front of the field extends up over 4 seconds over Harley Haber and James Scott, and the pack at the front has completely splintered here, Ryan. Sam Sutton is off the back of it. Cooper Webster is desperately trying to cling to a second, and I don't think he's quite there at the moment. It's 1.3, so James Scott and Harley Haber, well, they've got to work together. Those two are fighting for only one thing, and that's a podium.
Yeah, Sutton's he's not drastically off the pace, but it's a 10th or so a lap, and that is enough to make the difference on in a 33-lap race. The battle for second looks to be where it's at with Haber and Scott, because Haber hasn't pulled away from Scott at all. And in fact, David Warren is just continuing to open up that gap. It's now 4.6 seconds Warren to Haber, so he doesn't seem to be challenged at all up front. And it looks like it's battle for the best of the rest behind them. Cooper Webster's just sitting there at the moment, is he? He's a 2:05.3 last time, so he's a 10th quicker than Haber. I feel like Webster's just sitting back, biding this time, looking after those tyres. And if these two in front of him start battling, he'll be in prime position to capitalise on any mistakes they make.
Yeah, and it's all about how you make those moves as things go on further forward in this race. Saw a little slide there from Brad Newman. He's just about saved it, but Cananzi now over the back of Michael Taliantic, trying to find himself an opportunity to get himself into position. I've caught an eye on Corey Preston. He's had a poor lap this last time by here, Burton. He's lost 0.6 of a second. He's out of draft range now all of a sudden, and a lot more over this lap. It seems like it's compound errors from what I'm seeing, but your professional eyes are much better than mine.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see. It's something I noticed about Harley as well. Harley and Corey both had really strong opening laps of this race, really fast lap times, but now they both seem to be dropping off in terms of rear end grip. And it seems to be something everyone's found with the new car, that running a bit more camber in the rear will lead to the car having quite a bit more grip early on and coming on faster, but then wearing away quicker. So I'd probably argue that guys like Corey and Harley are running that slightly higher rear camber, but unfortunately now they're being punished for it.
Yeah, I think they are, and they're starting to just be dragged back in ever so slightly. You can compare Haber's lap time of 5.5 with Scott's 5.5, so able to keep it nice and calm, nice and steady through that section. No real worries to speak of at the moment as they all make their way through the final few corners to start lap 11 here of 33. The 1/3 distance will be score complete at the end of this lap. And looking at the times, it seems that everyone doing pretty nice times, but you got to talk about drivers who are looking a little bit quicker than the drivers in front. The big one is Kyle Stokes trying to chase down here, Ryan, Cananzi and Taliantic, and also Adam Briggs as well. He's only 3 seconds back.
He is in this little battle pack that he is chasing. It's now led by Corey Preston, because Jordan Ross has checked out from these guys. And Preston doesn't seem to have anything for him. He made a mistake at the final corner, pushing the car quite hard to stay with him. And now his battle seems to be in the mirror with Adam Briggs, Marco Taliantic, Brett Cananzi, and then Kyle Stokes. We'll keep an eye on this over the course of the race. Still 2/3 of the race left to go. Whether he can close up to these guys. He is lapping about half a second quicker than Cananzi last time by at least, so it seems he's got the pace. Whether we can continue to keep that pace for the next few laps, though, that's a completely different story.
Well, got to talk about Harley Haber now for the moment here, Burton, because he's just put 2 tyres over the right-hand curve, up over McPhillamy Park, heading to Skyline. You can tell he is right on the ragged edge, pushing right now.
Yeah, I think this is really a bit of a testament to Dane, actually. Dane is still running in the 204 bracket, which is absolutely obscene pace, and he looks like he's doing it easily as well. Harley definitely pushing those rear tyres to their absolute limit. I don't think he's got much left there, and he's got to be careful not to take too big a chunk out of him, because he's still got to probably do another 3 or 4 laps on these tyres, or he's going to be punished in the next.
Absolutely, he's got to make sure that he is working out how good the strategy is going to be for him as Blake Purdy, 3 laps down, decides he's going to come down in onto pit lane, take himself in for a stopgap in front now, up to 5.8 seconds at the front of the field. Another 6/10 for Dane Warren as he completely just blitzes away from the field right now. Taliantic, though, becomes the first of the main stoppers, Ryan, to make a stop on lap number 12 at 33. He's going to try and go for the undercut on what is 3 or 4 drivers in front of him.
It's quite early, isn't it? He's still got... We're a third of the way into this race, so he's still got 20-odd laps to go. And just having a look at his lap times from the start of the race, his best laps are 2:04.3. He's doing 2:07.9, 2:06.8, 2:07.1 before he pitted. So the drop-off in just 11 laps was a couple seconds. What's it going to be in 20 laps? He may find himself really struggling and really on the back foot coming into this race, because I think he may be a couple laps too early here.
Yeah, I think he may just be a couple laps early, but he now finds himself actually in a really bad place for his stop. Traffic there, and sometimes that's the one thing that sim racers do struggle with here, Bert. It's the fact of knowing that, yes, I may want to stop, I may want to get something right, but actually timing it in regards to other vehicles behind, a lot more difficult if you're only looking at your black box relative.
Well, straight up, the guys like Briggs and that, they're going to pitch straight away to respond to this. So that's completely killed his undercut. That's a disaster for Mike, because he's got him over the top of the mountain as well. So unless they jump out of the way, his new tyre benefit is pretty much dead. So yeah, that's a real shame for Mike, but hopefully he can bounce back. I think he will be able to make the tyres last longer. He drove them a bit hard in the first stint, and he did really need to do that with how much he was struggling, but I think that probably is going to punish him now he's being balked.
Yeah, and that's not going to be helpful at all at the moment.
And he's driven it off the road.
Oh no.
Right away, he's kept it out of the fence, but he's got a big water understeer going through McPhillamy Park, and then locked a brake coming down the... That's a nightmare. That's 2 seconds gone straight away.
2 seconds in all sorts of troubles for Taliantic. He's done well to keep it out of the wall, but there are the finer margins, and crucially, nobody's come to cover him over on this lap. They've seen, oh, he's in traffic and he's making mistakes here. So, Ryan, you'd have to say, if you're making mistakes, you're in a bit of trouble, and you're seeing all of that, then surely you can afford yourself a little extra lap as Brad Newman comes in from 13th place.
I think the other thing to note, too, is that they've been running around on nice hot tyres. They've got those tyres up to temperature, and we're very comfortable with them. Albeit might not have had too much grip, but now they come in, they make their best stop, they go back out on cold tyres again, and until we get a few weeks into the season, a lot of the drivers that only race these supercars, they race these supercars predominantly, won't be used to having cold tyres coming out of the pits with the old tyre model. They've got the new tyre model on now, so this cold tyre thing seems to be catching out a lot of drivers at the start of the races, and I dare say we'll see a few more drivers get caught out on the outlap after their pit stops too, because you've got to get those tyres off the temp, and that's very tricky when you're in traffic as well.
Yeah, and it's all about that time management as well. But Burton, how difficult are cold tyres getting them up to temperature? Sometimes it's a lap or 2 laps that gets it done. Tracks that are longer like this, maybe you're looking at a lap, maybe even closer towards 2/3 of a lap, which gets the tyres really nice and working. It's always a guessing game. Where do you dial back your braking point, surely?
Well, that's one of the big challenges of the new V7 tyre, which we've seen added to this car when it was introduced. So the old car on the V6 tyre, it was actually almost a slow outlap thing. The heat was not what you wanted for lap time. You got a huge gain straight away, and this has almost gone too far the other direction. So the car is actually really hard, even comparatively to real life, to get tyre temperature into. In real life, it's about 3 or 4 corners, I think, typically, and you'll get some temperature into them. But these guys are really going to struggle with it, and I think it is a matter of just braking early, but the power down is hard as well. This car has a lot of front-end grip, especially this new iteration of the car, and it will want to rotate on you very quickly. And in corners like the cutting coming through Reed Park, that can be a race-ending mistake.
It certainly can do, and nobody again has come in to cover Michael Taliancic. He's looked to try and put some good lap times together as second, third, fourth and fifth all have themselves at least 1 second between them at the moment, spacing each other out almost like they're 5 feet apart, so to speak. But now you've got to start thinking about, well, where's the time coming from Taliancic? He's gone through on Dan Drakea. That was for position on the number 26 driver, who is effectively the only Central Eastern Europe driver and actually the only non-Oz NZ driver in this field at the moment. So an early morning for him, looking to try and get some racing. 2:05 flat. Taliancic. Compare that to the times in front here, where you've got Corey Preston and Jordan Ross going at it. Jordan Ross was 1.7 seconds slower. If things stay like this, he will be jumped. And look at Corey Preston here. He's managed to find a way back to Jordan Ross here, Ryan.
He has. He dropped off quite a bit for a couple laps, but seems to have found a bit of a second win now. Either that or Jordan Ross has used up a bit of his tyre life, I should say, in that Evolution Racing team machine. And now he's under pressure again. And this time, Preston's got to be careful and patient into Forrest's elbow. Again, he just takes that line and be a cards width to the inside, trying to spot the apex of the corner. But it's all about this exit, and he's got a decent exit. He's in the slipstream, that's for sure. He's about 3 or 4 car lengths back from Jordan Ross, who's not doing too much to try and shake that slipstream. Often see on big slipstreaming straights like this, you see drivers up front snaking their way down the straight, but look how powerful the slipstream is. Preston tucks right up behind him, looks to the inside, thinks about the move into the chase, but he's too far back and he can't get it done. They're already on the edge of braking performance. You've really got to be almost alongside by the time you jump on those brakes.
Yes, and I think he's just been there and he's got flashbacks to what happened over in the AOSC finale where he had contact with Nick Cummings and it did not quite help him too much at all. So Corey Preston now maybe seeing that patience may have a virtue at this point, but they're bringing Adam Briggs into the fight as well, which will not be what will be wanted for Corey Preston, but it will be for Jordan Ross, because surely, Burton, if you look at Jordan Ross in terms of his fight, the one thing, if you're feeling like you may be slightly slower, is you want someone else to go in and cost the driver behind a little bit of time.
Yeah, that's it. I think Corey really should be pitting this lap. I think it's about that halfway point in the race. He can afford to take a bit of a risk. The traffic looks good. And also, Mike Taliancic has gone and run a 5.2. Even with his mistakes, if Mike's out there for too many laps running this much faster, these guys have the potential to get undercut. And then once their tyres come up to temperature, they're probably going to get balked by Mike. So I think we'll likely see Corey come into the lane this time by if Jordan doesn't pull away significantly.
Well, we'll keep an eye on that as they look to put themselves down in onto pit lane. Gap at the front up to 6.5 seconds now for Dane Warren. You've got to talk about Dane
Preston
Warren.
spinned it.
No, not like that, Corey. You were doing so well. He gets himself on the brakes, into the left, and he gets it a huge slide, and he's bam, straight into the wall. I would call that, in terms of an incident, Ryan, vintage Mount Panorama.
Incredibly frustrating for Preston. He looked pretty comfortable on that car, and then you'll see the replay here. It was getting on the brakes through the middle of Skyline, through the S's, that the car's unsettled itself, and he's just missed the apex, and the car's just spun itself around. It's not the sort of, yeah, it's not the sort of incident you'd expect to see coming down through the S's and the Skyline section. You normally go straight on when you lock the brakes, but this car has it looks like he's almost got the tiniest bit sideways, getting a car to the right, and it swung like a pendulum and really offloaded the car when he tried to get it back to the left.
Into the pits comes Harley Haber, and on cue, because he has no choice here, in comes Corey Preston as well. So Harley Haber, now that's interesting. You don't often see the driver at the front of the field make the first stop in terms of a battle pack. So Harley Haber then making a very interesting decision here, Burton.
Yeah, I think he knows he's probably going to come out of the pits with some cold tyres. So given he's got the lead, I think he might have taken the L early, maybe thinking that when the guys then come out of the pits, even if guys like Jordan and whatnot jump him, he might then be able to use the warmer tyres on their outlap to maybe have another crack back. So no surprises from Harley. As I say, I think we were starting to see his rear tyres go quite aggressively. And, you know, Mike Taliancic has run 3 laps, 205.0, 205.2, 205.1. So there's clearly a big gain on the new tyre. So I think Harley's just going to do that, trying to get his cold tyres out of the way so he can potentially minimise the damage later.
I certainly think so. He had about a second's gap over James Scott coming down in onto the lane, which he'll be happy to try and use as much as he possibly can. And now on the back of Jordan Ross is Adam Briggs, who has taken up the Corey Preston role, and hopefully will not see his race end in a very similar fashion as he gets on the brakes down the hill, left-hand bend, of course, of the Forest Elbow and onto the Conrod once again. Briggs has been patient. We've been talking about his consistency value. A 206.6 took half a second out last time by. And you can see he's over to the left-hand side of the circuit here, trying to give himself the run as late as he possibly can to try and make this move side by side and into the grass. Can he slow it up? Can he slow it up? Can he slow it up? Oh, he's doing well, but can he get it? Oh, he slowed it up. That's wonderful from Adam Briggs. He had no right there, Ryan, to slow that car up.
That is, you won't see that again. There's no way you end up 4 wheels in the grass on the chase and pull it up. It's, that's ridiculous, Jake.
That was a very awesome move to manage to pull that up, but I also noticed Jordan Ross's pit entry. That was very questionable. He made a very late dive into the pits. I think there's half a chance he might get an unsafe entry for that one. That was very late, went straight over the commitment cone, so I'm not too sure where the stewards will sit.
I've just seen an engine blow. It's Christian Smart in 16th place. He was 2 laps down, and the engine has just gone kaput on the mountains, on the Conrod Straight. So that's going to hurt. And there is Scott. He's come out of pit road right behind Harley Haber. Webster has had a long stop. He's dropped so much time. So in all of this, we've seen a few drivers try and cover the moves. Scott's got a lot closer because of the fact that the tyres were not up to temper. Harley Haber, as he has his own moment there, Ryan.
Scott, cold tyres, again catching him out. Did everything except loop the car. Going through Griffin's Bend. Take a look at this on the replay. He, not trying to make a move, just trying to get through the corner. Nice and easy, business as usual. And trying to drive through the corner way too fast. The rear end was not willing to go that far through the corner. The rear tyres exceeding the amount of grip they wanted to provide. And did a good job to hang on to that. But it's cost him time to Harley Haber. It cost him the opportunity to stick with Haber for now. He's probably now over a second and a half behind him.
And crucially, we were talking about that undercut as well, done by Michael Taliancic, and Jordan Ross finds himself a very big amount of seconds behind Taliancic here, who's worked it to a T at the moment, Burton, and Ross has probably got himself about 5 seconds plus, maybe even 8, 9, 10 seconds to try and chase down if he's not too careful.
Yeah, bearing in mind, though, that those tyres will start to go away quite quickly, and I think for the next 4 or 5 laps, Jordan Ross is probably going to pull 3-4 tenths a lap on Taliancic, maybe even more with the way these tyres degrade. So I think we'll slowly come back towards Jordan Ross, but we're hearing Briggs has lost it coming into
pit lane. He's done it on pit lane.
So well.
He's going to have to do the Austin Powers here because he's caught the grass. He spun it 90 degrees, and ultimately he has to sit and wait for 2 vehicles to go by and then get himself on the reverse and back in again. So a horror pit stop for Adam Briggs on entry. That is why, Burton, you practice pit entry.
Yeah, very
Dane Warren
to make for him, but Dane Warren seems to have lost a lot of time in the...
He's behind Scott by a long way and behind Haber by an even longer distance. He's only just in front of Sam Sutton. So Dane Warren has had an extremely long pit stop there. Maybe he was caught speeding in the pit lane. That's the only thing I can think of. It was a 12-second
12.
longer stop. And he's
That's
made a
speeding.
mistake as well. He did that on the first lap too. It's not a speeding penalty, but he's done something, and it's cost him a lot.
Burton, do you think he's fully fueled the car?
Well, it wouldn't be beyond Dane the Facade Warren's ability to overfuel the car in a pit stop. He lost a race in E-Series doing the exact same thing. So fingers crossed for Dane that is not, in fact, what he's done. But I think he should still be able to recover from this. His speed is absolutely phenomenal. I think there's half a chance he might still be able to win this race. There's a long...
Well, he's got to get by Sam Sutton, who's not going to make life very easy for him as he chases him down the mountain on the brakes. So a big game changer in terms of this race. A poor Dane Warren stop, and all of a sudden the race swings back the other way as Harley Haber has the net race lead and a good net race lead margin to go along with it as well, as they find themselves third and fourth net on the road, Sutton and Warren at this point in time, because out of pits comes Corey Preston. And looking at drivers here who are trying to keep themselves going, you've got the likes of Adam Briggs, who didn't have the best stop. Kyle Stokes, Brett Cananzi also came in on this lap. And there's the overtake for Dane Warren down the inside at the chase. There weren't going to be too many qualms about it for the Logitech G Ultra C Sports team. But just like that, Warren up onto the podium once again here, Ryan.
That was a very good move indeed. He just jumped onto the brakes before the King, kept dabbing the brakes to keep himself tucked right up behind Sam Sutton, and then chinked out to left at the final possible opportunity without hitting the back of Sam Sutton's car. It can be tricky to make the move stick at the chase if you aren't already alongside them heading through the King, because the braking zone comes up really quickly before you get the car straightened out. And I've seen a few times, I think we've all seen quite a few times, unfortunate incidents of people being rear-ended as a result of failed overtaking attempts into that spot. But Warren, the experience he's got, that was child's play for him, easy done. And he's got a lot of work to do now. He's 7.7 seconds off the lead of the race. Can he get there? Not too sure. It's going to be close because he had almost this lead. Exactly half the race had gone. He had this similar lead, 7.7 seconds, to Haber. He's got the same amount of time now to try and get that gap again. But if he does get it, he's going to be right up behind Haber, and he's still going to pass him. Scott's there too.
Yeah, he's going to get past James Scott as well for second place. Oh, he's in the fence! Yeah. He's caught the wall at the metal grate. Dane Warren's pushing too hard here, Burton.
Yeah, these cars, compared to the VFs and FGs of old, these cars are very, very fragile. That is going to be at least 20 k's an hour at the end of the straight worth of damage for Dane. I think any chance he did have of putting this car in P1 or P2 just disappeared. I think he's going to struggle to even hold it in front of Sam. That is a massive mistake.
Oh, you don't often see it, but a mistake from Dane Warren. Well, it seems like he got rattled, he got flustered, he got frustrated with what happened in his pit stop, got thrown out of the rhythm, and now you can see where the draft comes in for Sam Sutton. Here he goes, thinking, waiting. Thought better of it. It was a poor time to catch Dane Warren at that point there, Ryan. It was right before turning on entry apex.
And if you go on board with Dane Warren right now, you'll see it's very slight, but he has got a bit of steering damage in that machine. He's very slight, got right hand down on the straight. As we zoom in, you can see there the wheel at an angle. So he's got that to contend with too on a track where you already have to be pinpoint perfect. He's got to find the center of that wheel through these corners, and he's got his work absolutely stacked up against him now. I don't think Warren's going to get back to the lead of the race. I think his battle might be just fending off Sam Sutton, because that's probably done a fair bit of damage to that car, other than what we can see on screen with that damage.
Absolutely, and in terms of changes, we've got 14 drivers on the lead lap, and Adam Briggs is back in again. Has he binned the vehicle at certain points in time here as Adam Briggs, or has he really just had a long stop? He's come in a second time. I think he's been caught for an unsafe pit entry there, and he's had to come in and serve a stop of some kind, unless he's caught damage over the last lap. So we may have to look back and see if anything has happened to Adam Briggs. The rear of that vehicle does not look very healthy at all from what I can tell. So that looks like he's had it done at the cutting. Yeah, Griffin's Bend, turn 2. I think Adam Briggs has got it all shades of wrong, Burton.
Yeah, Sam, a little bit stumped as to what's gone on there. He didn't have the car on the grass or anything like that. The car just didn't look like it's just lost rear brakes or something like that. That was a David Bernard 2011 spec crash. I'm not too sure what happened there. Came in on the rear tyres, but terribly unfortunate for him because, as I said earlier in the race, he drove a really, really consistent race. He was one of my picks to get well into that top 5.
He certainly was, and he's certainly looking to try and find himself maybe a little bit of help. It brings us now down to just 13 drivers who will be on the leading lap, with Dan Drakea currently in 13th place in the number 26 machine. And for those who are position 13, position 12, 25, 26 on the numbers here, Ryan, they're going to be getting a very nice healthy haul here around Mount Panorama because, simply put, they've had no pace, but they've done the one thing that I think half the field hasn't done today: keep it out of trouble.
For sure. But what about Harley Haber, number 18 driver in this room? He's leading this race. He's been doing really well, has Haber, in this in the first 2 weeks of this new Supercars series with the new cars. And he was the last driver, in fact, in terms of R rating in the room last week out at the names escaped me, Road America. So Haber's going to find his R rating skyrocketing over the next few weeks if he continues this form. And I won't be surprised to see him one of the higher numbers in the room come the end of the season. James Scott in second. He's fast. He's got a high R rating. Dane Warren too. He's so fast that he's going to be disappointed with third place.
Well, he's still in that battle for third. Keep an eye out. James Scott took half a second out of Harley Haber that last time by, brought the gap down to 2.7, as we know that Harley Haber has a lap older tyres than James Scott. That's worth keeping in mind. Keep a look at Michael Taliancic and what his last times were, because he is a full 1.8 seconds slower than Jordan Ross that last time by. It's surely not all on tyres for Taliancic there in terms of that slow lap time, Burton.
Yeah, he's out of position though, don't forget. I think he went into the pits in about P9 or P10 and he's come out P6, so he's starting to lose the time he gained, so we're not really too surprised by that to Jordan Ross. I think he should be able to hold on to P7 though. Cananzi's quite fast, but in the last stint, Cananzi's tyres wore a bit quicker than Jordan's, so hopefully Mike can stay up the front there, but I think the battle that we really should watch is the lap time battle between James and Harley, as Ryan mentioned.
Dane Warren, he's gone into the back of Sam Sutton. Sutton's going to try and save it and just about gets away with it. And I think Dane's going to sit and wait and say, you know what, I'll redress that position, but he'll immediately look to go back on the offensive. No, he won't, down on the brakes into the final corner. Dane Warren was completely monstered down the mountain straight, down the Conrod, and then straight into the braking zone. Dan was a little bit earlier, and he somehow managed to keep the car on the island. That is military-grade precision and military-grade reactions there, Burton.
Yeah, I think, as I said earlier, that hit from Dane's really hurt his straight line speed. And Sam, yep, military grade from a military man there. Very well done. Hopefully he can hang on to third. I think Dane's going to really struggle with the damage he's got to get past Sam now. His only real spots to make a move are at the end of straights. And with so much straight line speed damage, I think he's really going to battle to get one.
Well, he's going to try and battle hard, but Ryan, they know there's not much time remaining there. At the end of this lap, 2/3 distance score complete, and then we'll head ourselves to 11 laps to go here at the Mount Panorama circuit. So a lot still on the offing, and for the challenge of James Scott, it's not quite caught Blake Purdy at the right place there for lap traffic. It was through McPhillamy Park. Always difficult, had to wait up the mountain to try and get by the lap traffic.
He did. It might cost him, say, 0.2 per second. He was only 0.2 per second quicker than Haber last time by. He needs that because I'm struggling to do maths in my head at the moment. I'm struggling to do anything in my head today. If he was doing 0.2 of a second for the last 11 laps, he would get very close to Harley Haber. He'd be short by 3 cents, so he'd get very close indeed. And can't afford to be held up by lap traffic like that. But that's another lap where he's getting no time, unless he finds a whole lot of speed through the other sections of this track. As we're still watching the Sam Sutton Dane Warren battle, because Sutton hasn't pulled out from Warren, and that slipstream down Conrod Straight, the slipstream will get down Mountain Straight. It's just keeping Warren in this fight, and if Sutton makes a mistake, we may yet see the Altus Esports driver back ahead and in the final podium spot.
No, they have to worry about behind as well here, because Burton, there is a very young, very hungry Cooper Webster who wants to get back in onto this as well. He did a 205 flat that last time by. He matched Sam Sutton and Dane Warren. So those on a 205 flat, it's not that far away, and it's not inconceivable that Dane Warren and Sam Sutton come together for a second time.
Yeah, I coined Dane the facade. He is someone who can sit behind someone, act like he's not going to have a move, and then suddenly have a go. So I think there's half a chance that could happen, and that'll really open the door up for Cooper Webster. I know Dane is trying his hardest at the moment to qualify for the Porsche Esports Super Cup, as broadcast by us on SimSpeed. So every bit of iRating counts, because I know he was in third split last week, even with his very high iRating. So he's chasing every bit of iRating he can get at the moment.
Certainly is, and he will only gain a very minimal amount being in 4th place. He's got to be very, very cautious about exactly what he can do. He's got to keep it together now. Can't afford to be in trouble around this style of track as the racing continues here at this wonderful bastion of Australian sim racing at the moment. You look at drivers maybe a little bit further down the order, the top 10 currently being rounded out by Brad Newman, who's currently 45 seconds off the race lead. On an island on his own is also Kyle Stokes there in 9th place. He's a couple of seconds behind Brett Cananzi, but that gap is still coming down to Michael Taliancic. Not as much though as it was, only 7/10 that last time by, and Cananzi took 1.4 seconds. So a poor lap by Jordan Ross is allowing Cananzi back in. He was 1.2 back there, Ryan, last time they crossed the line.
Yeah, he was, and he's just slowly catching them, and Warren was slowly catching Sam Sutton there, as we saw at the end of Conrod Straight too. You go back and look at Brett Cananzi as well, because he's just in a world of his own at the moment. He's about a second away from Jordan Ross. He's got a comfortable margin of Kyle Stokes behind, but this is a battle that's going to close up in the next couple of laps, because Taliancic is the slowest of these three. He's at the head of the train. The fastest is Jordan Ross in the middle. Oh, sorry, it's Cananzi at the back. It's one of those scenarios where the order's a bit jumbled up. You got the fastest guy out front, the out back, the slowest guy out front, and what that leads to is a very interesting battle, because Jordan Ross is giving the meat in the sandwich here. He's going to have the pace over Taliancic, but not quite over Brett Cananzi. And that one should be quite interesting in a couple laps' time.
But this sort of reminds you of those old SimSpeed challenges we did on the Bathurst 1000s, where you'd have the 3 vehicles lined up side by side and you do the speed comparison.
Yeah, it is a bit like that, isn't it? The tyre wear in this car and this iteration at the moment is a little bit high. I think iRacing should probably bring it down just a little bit. It certainly does feel like these guys are racing in different classes at the moment, but I guess, you know, the parity debate could be brought up, couldn't it? Would be the right time.
Oh, God. Parity between them then, because you've got Jordan Ross. If we look at his vehicle, he's in a Mustang. Brett Cananzi's in a Mustang. And Kyle Stokes behind that is in a Holden. So clearly, with Taliancic in a Holden as well, it seems that seeing as he's the slowest, we might need to talk parity here, Ryan.
I don't even want to get into that conversation.
Well, that's a very, very good answer. Very good answer indeed. Still on for 3rd place, though. Sam Sutton is just keeping Dane Warren at an arm's reach here, as Dane is just desperately trying to deal with everything he's got. And the damage will do more things as well here, Burton, because it will also mess up the fuel numbers ever so slightly.
Yeah, I think we're probably going to see Dane being pretty alright on fuel. I think we said that we thought he might have taken a full tank, so I don't think Dane's going to be in too much trouble from a fuel point of view. But he's certainly struggling to get by, Sam. As I say, your 3 big passing zones here at Bathurst are the Chase, Murray's, Turn 1, and Griffin's, or 4 rather, and they're all at the end of straights, so it's going to be quite hard even with the draft, with the damage that Dane has, but he might have a crack this time. There's half a shot he might get a sniff here, but decides otherwise.
Yeah, good decision. It would have to be a huge send. He keeps his cards close to his chest. I think he's got that ability to send one in deep and go and really have an attack. But they do know that there are opportunities. There's 2 Exto Gaming cars that very much are laps down to get by. It's Blake Purdy and also Corey Preston as well, trying to save their iRacing and safety rating for their cotton shocks. But ultimately, they've got to have their good runs and try and work out the best place to go out there and make the right place to make a move. Sometimes it is not as simple as I get past you, everything's fine and dandy. Especially not for Dane Warren, especially with the damage he has here, Ryan. It's got to be one move and one decisive one.
It does, and the lap traffic in front of Sam Sutton may be a benefit to him as Warren almost wipes the fence there on the run down the mountain. Corey Preston and Blake Purdy are coming up very fast in front of Sam Sutton. I wonder whether they should get by Preston down this straight if he moves over. Blake Purdy, though, will be a different story. Luckily, they've caught them in a pretty good spot on the track. They haven't caught them on the mountain. They've caught them sort of at the bottom where there's 3 straights where they can get by those cars, and they have got by Corey Preston already. He moved out of the way and played no part in this battle. Blake Purdy, I suspect, will get deposited down Mountain Straight too. So, luckily for Sutton, unluckily for Warren, they're not going to be held up by lap traffic. They caught them in the perfect spot.
They absolutely did. Blake Purdy, by the way, is 13 laps down at the moment, which tells you all you need to know about how his day has been going for him. Gap at the front is 2.5 seconds. The lap before last, Haver took 3/10 out of James Scott. Scott responds by taking a 10th out of him. That is not enough, Burton, for the race win. Harley's just got to keep it as he has done, to keep himself nice and calm, as now Brett Cananzi has caught right up to the rear of Jordan Ross. Turn 2 may be the place we see the move being done.
Yeah, I think the race is going to be on here. I think Brett should maybe play this one a little bit smart and see if he can just sit behind Jordan Ross, because Mike T is really struggling on those older tyres, and Brett might be able to get 2 for the price of 1 if he just plays his cards right. Let's see if Jordan can break under pressure a little bit whilst trying to pass Mike. Being the meat and the sandwich in a situation like this, especially at a track like Bathurst, is really, really hard to make a definitive and clean move. Jordan's certainly got the ability, but Brett can make the most of it if he just waits a lap or 2.
He's got to be patient and wait at the place where he knows he can. So we'll see how this one factors in for Cananzi as they look to try and go out there and attack the positions that are so very much in at this point in time. ERT looking to try and keep themselves nice and calm against the Eclipse car behind. And we don't often talk much about Eclipse Motorsport, Ryan, and what they're capable of doing, because they are effectively very much like a racing point. You don't talk much about them, but they suddenly crop up with result.
Yeah, they do. They're a handy little team, aren't they, Eclipse? And Brett Cananzi is a very talented driver. Just on a separate note, Dave Warren hit the wall again.
Oh, no.
This time heading up under the tree, he wiped the wall on entry and it cost him a massive side, some tyre wear, but importantly, a lot of time as well. I think we've got it here on the Motor Simulation replay. And we do. It's in a few corners time, unfortunately, so we'll wait a few seconds here, but you can see how close he was to oh, my brain isn't working. It's too early in the morning. It's 11:30. It's Sam Sutton there. Sorry. Here we go.
11:30 for me as well. Don't complain. Oh, there you see it. Bang.
Yeah, there it is.
And it's the lightest attack, but it sends him into a slide, and it cost him so much. Now Dane Warren is fighting to stay here, Burton, within 1 second, and he was out of 1 second by 14 thousandths that last time by, but he's done well on this lap.
I think the draft was helping him out quite a lot, because he can still drive the thing through the corners, and he's got quite new tyres relative to Sam, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the draft would have been helping him out with that damage, but now he's started to lose that. I think there's a half a chance that he might be a little bit susceptible to Cooper Webster behind, who was 1.2 seconds quicker that lap. Cooper's really stepped it up, and I think could be a threat to Dane if Dane doesn't have any draft.
Well, we do know that Dane and Sam came together in on the same lap, so they'll have equal tyres as they look to try and attack, as now Talianchich has been caught by Jordan Ross, struggling up the mountain. Cananzi, nowhere to go to make that move on the Mustang in front of him. So up through the Grayton, now over towards the fantastic section of McPhillamy Park as they go through the left-handers and down the hill again. Cananzi surely in line at the moment with just a handful of laps to go to try and get both of them at this point in time. But the longer they wait, the more Kyle Stokes comes into the mix. Ryan.
Certainly does, and Taliancic is really the cork in the bottle. He's going to be under a lot of pressure here because not only does he have this massive long Conrod straight where Ross and Cananzi are closing in on him, they're getting a benefit through Forest Elbow too, which is closing up the gap in itself before they even get to the straight because they've got so much more life through the tyres. They're able to keep the corners quicker. And Taliancic, oh no, he's hit him, and Ross gets spun, and Kyle Stokes gets into the back as well of Brett Cananzi, and that was just a little bit awkward. Kyle Stokes, not sure whether he had anywhere to go on that one, and it looks like the redress too from Brett Cananzi to allow Jordan Ross back through, but that was just a bit messy. He just got into the left rear of Jordan Ross's machine, the middle of the corner, and at that point there's nothing you can do if you're Jordan Ross. You're along for the ride.
I'm going to have to become Mark Scaife here because the redress has caused all of that in terms of that incident there, Burton, because it was Ross into Cananzi, and whilst Cananzi was waiting for Jordan Ross to level out, there was nowhere to go for one driver being Kyle Stokes. So he ploughs into the back of him, and suddenly Taliancic may just be home and drive for sixth.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think there was a little bit of netcode in that first contact there. Unfortunately, we are racing on a US server tonight. iRacing, please fix. But yeah, I think that's probably led to that little incident, and a big shame for a lot of those guys. There was a real race brewing there, but what that has actually done is given a big free kick to Mike Taliancic, who previously was a little bit worried about his strategy, and he's now pretty much going to sit for an easy P6. So a great strategy call from him to make that early stop. And I think a deserved sixth place if he manages to bring it home.
Worry about the race lead. James Scott has pulled the gap in by 0.4 of a second that last time by, and it visibly does not look like 1.8 seconds anymore for Harley Haber. Have the tyres started to give themselves up as Kyle Stokes he's now in a world of trouble. He's gone off. He's hit the wall with Brady Myers again. So Myers has run into the back of Kyle Stokes, and that is not on as there's been an incident. Gap at the front. It's 1.1 seconds here, Ryan. The race is on.
That has come down drastically. Last time I looked, Harley Haber was pulling away from James Scott, and now Scott has he's found something to close right back up. He found 0.8 of a second on the last lap. So Haber has probably made a mistake on that last lap to allow James Scott this close. But this might be just the incentive that Scott needs to close up and find that last couple of tenths of a second per lap time to close up to the back of Harley Haber.
Well, they looked at each other. It's one lap fresher tyres for James Scott, we've said already, but 5 laps to find a second and make the move. You can't jump the gun for James Scott. We've seen how Dean Thrower has been helpful for him in the likes of AOSC and has really given him a good strategy to keep himself in play in terms of this race. But that number 4 car cannot have eyes bigger than the stomach compared to the Mark 1 stalwart that is Harley Haber here, Burton.
Yeah, we're just checking that replay out from what we saw coming into the last corner between Jordan Ross and I believe the 17 of Brett Cananzi. Those cars battling wounded, and he managed to get the move done nicely into the last corner there. But looking back to our battle between James Scott and Harley Haber for the lead, as we said last stint, I think Harley's struggling a little bit to keep the rear tyres on this car. Well, James Scott's got that ERT Hyperdoc, and looks like he's chasing him down and might make a race of this.
We might make a race of this as they head through Conrod Straight, and now look at the fastest corner in Australian sim racing as they try and battle it out, duke it for a race win, which has been quietly sitting, quietly waiting, quietly brewing for opportunities. Other battles out on track. Brad Newman not safe for 9th place. Steve Janssen might want to have something to say about that one too as they go through, and Cooper Webster has caught the back of Dane Warren. This for third and fourth. Gap across the line, down to just 0.6 of a second. Scott angling himself at big half-a-second chunks a lap here, Ryan, to take the race lead. 4 to go at the mountain.
This is has very suddenly turned into what should be a grandstand finish here. And as well, Cooper Webster is harassing the back of Dane Warren as well. So 2 big battles forming at the death. We've got 4 laps to go. 3 laps next time they cross the line. And here comes Cooper Webster down to the inside of Dane Warren. And there's nothing Warren can do about that. A bit of contact though, he gets into the left rear, but it looks like Webster's got that move done and he moves up into P4.
Very nicely done by Cooper Webster to get past a damaged vehicle is sometimes tougher than getting past one which is at full force, and that does take a little bit of skill there, Burton, because you look at a driver who is damaged, there is that unpredictability factor in terms of the overtake.
Yeah, Dane's the facade, so you never know what's going to happen, but yeah, pretty easy one there for Cooper. I think Dane has nothing to fight with in terms of the straight line damage that he's got, so he might have a crack back, but I think it's going to be Cooper's P4 pretty well sewn up. He's already gapping him over the top of the hill. I think the race that we want to be watching now is between James and Harley. James can sniff it. There's 2 laps to go, a race win in the new car, first time here at Bathurst in the official series. This is on.
Well, he's got an extra lap on top of that too, so it's 3 laps that he's got to try and make this move, but he is in that draft and he is closing that gap down to Harley Haber across the Conrod, and now on the brakes once again, and it's here where the time gets caught back up for James Scott. On the brakes is where he's getting it, and that's going to be worrying for Harley Haber here, Ryan, because you look at it, on the brakes, Harley Haber now will be looking at trying to play defensive through a couple corners the moment that James Scott hits himself within 0.2 of him.
Yeah, for sure. Haber's going to be going ultra defensive here in just a few corners' time. I'm just trying to figure out where this swing of momentum has come from in favour of Scott. Either Haber's used up his tyres, which you wouldn't think is too likely given he had a comfortable 2.5, 2-second lead, or whether he just underfilled that car by a litre or so and is now paying the price for having to save just a little bit at the back end of the stint. Maybe he didn't quite realise or something, but it is not good for Haber. It's fantastic news for James Scott, though, because he's basically there. One more big burst of slipstream down Conrod Straight, and he's going to be firmly on the back bumper of Harley Haber, and it's going to be mission impossible, I think, to try and get by him, because Haber, we know he's an aggressive driver. He is surely going to be as aggressive in his defence as he is with his overtaking, driving that car down the very inside line into the chase, quite possibly, as they're wringing everything out of these cars. There's nothing between them and the walls at the moment.
Nothing between them at all, and I was going to keep an eye out on James Scott heading through that section of track, because he did clip the wall ever so slightly. He very nearly clipped it, so he's got to be really careful here as Scott. These drivers 1 and 2 in the championship after the opening round. They are 1 and 2 on the road in championship order, and James Scott now closer than he's ever been, here to head down Conrod and try and get it done. It's popsicle sticks here when they get themselves to the line, but now what do you do if you're number 4, James Scott? You even got a number 4 at the end of your name because you're the 4th James Scott on iRacing. On the brakes they go. Not close enough yet, but now the gap down to just 0.2 of a second.
Well, screw the being careful thing. You've been patient for 31 laps. Hang the thing off the wall. Have a dip. This is the race, as you say, for the championship. Fairly high soft tonight. So a championship result here would be great for James Scott if he can get one up on Harley. He's made a little bit of an error coming up onto that main straight there, but he's got 2 laps to get this done now. He's got the draft advantage. Harley's going to make it hard, but I think he's got a good run off.
Harley is the most the most divisive man in all of sim racing. He's also very decisive as well. Mostly you have to say that he is very much, I will make my move here, I will make my move there. And he had a half think about getting on the brakes and defending the position, but James Scott getting a little weave in the mirrors, not really too fussed about the way things went for the moment. A little further back, Kananzi and Ross, that battle all but bleeding out at the moment. Janssen still fighting this one, 9th and 10th with Brad Newman. Those are the other scraps going on at the moment. We're down to just 12 cars on the leading lap from starting 26, and the front two fighting, and there's the mistake from one Mr. James Scott coming up Griffin's Mount.
There's 12 cars in the lead lap. It's going to be 11 very quickly. Dandra Kay is just in front of Harley Haber. I think he might just get away with it, Haber, and Drakea might just be caught. But he's made a mistake through the S's and he's very slow. He might just be caught as he get on the Conrad straight, and it should be not much of an issue. Again, Haber, he gets lucky with the lap traffic, catches them in a good time, and Scott closing up again. He's got the pace over Haber, but he can't afford another mistake because he's lost the ground relative to where he was this time last lap, as Haber uses up all of the draft on Dan Drakea, almost rear ends him, trying to find every last bit of speed he can find.
Well, he needs everything. He's got to lap it a little bit to open up, to get what he wants, because lap 33 comes up in the book. Scott's given a mistake away. He's only got one lap now to make the move, and it will be the final lap. He will have to get it done. So watch this, ladies and gentlemen. This is going to be a very, very hard-fought battle from now to the end. Through Murray's Corner, the white flag will come out from the iRacing system. There'll be one lap to go for Harley Haber and James Scott, two of the brightest stars of the future of Australian sim racing. On the brakes into the left-hander of turn number 1, Hell's Corner. Over the curb, a lot more aggressively there was Harley Haber, but it was a much more aggressive exit off of that curb from James Scott, and he will not have the run up the mountain to make the move. The gap was nearly 0.4 of a second when they crossed the line, but up into turn 2 and the Griffin's Bend. Now here we go. All about picking up momentum here from James Scott, hoping there's a mistake from Haber in front, who has been impervious so far. Not the quickest overall, but has been very, very consistent, and that's all he's needed to be all day long. Mistake through the cutting, though, for James Scott. Got a slide on, had to correct it, and suddenly that gap opens all the way up the hill through Griffin's Mount and up towards the Frog Hollow, the Metal Grate, and then you got Solomon Park, McPhillamy Park, and then you got Brock Skyline, and that gap extending again and again. James Scott is driving the car too hard at the moment, and that time is evaporating up the mountain. Down it you go. You've got to have a perfect mountain section now, James, if you want to try and get yourself an opportunity. And my goodness, he is trying everything. He's using all of the road that he possibly can onto the brakes for the Forest Elbow for the final time. It's not out of the realms of possibility, but it's going to have to take the almightiest of Daniel Ricciardo-esque lunges to make it happen. And look at this, it's cheeky now from Harley Haber. He's putting the serpentine on James Scott. There won't be any reasons to worry anymore. He's not close enough, Harley, to go and chase you down here at the fastest corner of Australian motorsports. It's going to have to be at the final corner. Look at how he closes, brings the gap down to a car length and a half as they now head to the final corner. Harley's got to make sure he covers off this move at the final chance. There's going to be a half look from Scott, but he's far too far back for this. Harley Haber will survive again and win back-to-back here on Monday night. He wins at Mount Panorama. Scott in second, and Sam Sutton will come home for a well-deserved third-place finish in Burton. What you had to say was a race which was all about attrition, and then brought together one of the very, very good finishes of Mount Panorama racing.
That's for sure, and I think the man who's learnt that most tonight will be a very angry Altus Esports driver of Dane Warren. He had this thing wrapped up tonight, and a mistake in the pits and then a further mistake on the track has hurt him there. Mike Taliancic brings it round the last corner to finish P6 as well. Great drive from him. Bit of an ambitious strategy that paid dividends, but it still looks to be on between Brad Newman and Steve Janssen coming through the chase. They're heading down towards Murray's now. It looks like Brad's going to come through for OPR in P9.
Well, he gets through the final corner, no worries at all, no issues on the fuel. It's a short run to the line, and he gets exactly what he wants out of that, so he'll be happy with that result. The final driver on the leading lap will be Luke Page in the number 25 machine. He's heading himself down the mountain right now, but we can get to you a replay of everything that has happened. So this is Brett Cananzi. He's run out of fuel heading towards the line, and I think He's just going to get robbed here. And, oh, he's been robbed by Jordan Ross over the line. You talk about difference makers. It was 7/10 come the end. But Jordan Ross has robbed Brett Cananzi of a few iRating points and a few safety rating points as we get classified results now of everything that has happened here from Mount Panorama. So it will be Harley Haber's win. He goes back-to-back for 2 straight. 1 hour, 9 minutes, 39 seconds. He did it by a margin of 3/10 in the end from James Scott, who saw when the issue became, I've just got to get past him. He never put himself in a position to make the overtake. Sam Sutton will come home in 3rd with Cooper Webster. 4th place for him. Dane Warren had it under lock and key, but he only manages a top 5 finish. Michael Taliacic comes home in 6th with Jordan Ross in 7th. Brett Cananzi gets 8th place. 9th to Brad Newman. And Steve Janssen rounding out the top 10. 11 to 20 with Ryan Jones.
Coming home in 11th, just missing out on the top 10. Starting from 24th on the grid, so not a good drive nonetheless, was Luke Page, final driver on the lead lap 2. Then Dan Jokea, the only driver 1 lap down in 12th. Then the drivers that ran into a lot of troubles today. Brady Myers, Adam Briggs, Corey Preston, Kyle Stokes, and then some retirements too, and Blake Purdy, Christian Smart, Wayne Burke, and Brenton Hobson running out the top 20. He was 31 laps adrift.
And you talk about those as well who are right down the order. The big lap 2 incident caught out Hobson, as said, but Brian Borg, Sean Thompson, Matt Morris, Chris Coxhead, Zach Hanlon all caught out. Guy Leach didn't make it to the start either, so that was disasters for him in terms of the 26-car field that we had today. But Burton, you have to look at this Mount Panorama race. It was always going to be a tough battle. It was always going to be a difficult battle. But I think a few drivers today will feel like they left something out there on that track. And of course, this is one of the few circuits where you have to respect the track more than respect the driver.
Yeah, that's certainly it. And I think the pit lane incident, I'd be interesting to know. We're theorising that it was an overfuel or an error on Dane's behalf in the pits, but I'm a little bit curious how he lost that 12 seconds. That's going to hurt him. That's going to stick in his side for sure. So big shame for Dane. I think he had this one locked up tonight. But next week, we're heading to Phillip Island, another one of the great circuits that we have here in Australia. Personally, my favourite circuit, both in real life and in the sim. So really excited to see how the racing goes there. Big draft packs is what I'm expecting to see, along with some awesome racing.
Well, some awesome racing we will expect. And, of course, you can catch that 1 week's time, Monday nights, our V8 officials. Make sure that you check that out as well as everything else on the iRacing Esports Network. A massive thanks, of course, to Motum Simulations, who have sponsored the replays for us. But from Jake Burton on my left, Ryan Jones on my right, and behind the cameras, Jay Kennedy. Pause for dramatic effect. Kennedy. I've been Jake Sperry. It's been some magic once again. Harley Haber shines once more, but he had to do it the hard way here today. He had to fight for every single inch of track on that road. He had a bit of help from Dane Warren, but ultimately, James Scott is once again playing second fiddle. We'll see you in a week's time, of course, at the magical Phillip Island.
This is fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction. He's going around the outside of both of them. Maloney.
Oh, he's taken Anderson. Anderson's up to him.
Oh my God. Big crash. Oh my goodness. Half the field's going to get rolled.
Second very close. These guys I want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go.
Oh no! That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?